yours. Securing the future, CISO insights and industry leaders discussing uh-oh. Luke? Hello? Hello? Perfect. Stand by. Our tech team. I think I sound. Can we hear me now? Yes. Okay, wonderful. Mercury retrograde, am I right? Dr. Charles, I really will hand it over to you at this point. Sure. But securing the future, CISO insights and industry leaders discussing current cyber threats and strategic defense practices. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And again, welcome to our panel discussion. My name is Dr. Charles. And before we begin, just want to do a brief introduction to our panelists. Many of them, you kind of heard some information when they were getting their rewards, but I'd like to give them an opportunity to say a few words about themselves. So, Gregory, if you could start off. Sure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gregory Carpenter. I have a doctorate in epidemiology. I'm a offensive cyber person from NSA, and spent a lot of years working for the UN, Interpol, FBI, and several of the other agencies that do cyber investigations.
I'm Amber Simco. I work at CyberSecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISO, within DHS. I'm a senior advisor on the threat hunting team within the cybersecurity division. Before that, I was at National Institutes of Health, where I was the acting CISO and deputy CISO concurrently, same time, for a couple of years. And then my previous background was coming out of a lot of financial management and financial management system security.
Hi, Nish Majmudar, currently CISO at a company called Mathematica. We're a data analytics, data modeling company. Based out of Princeton, New Jersey. I work out of our DC office. Prior to that, I was deputy CISO at CareFirst Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is a local Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance provider, right? And prior to that, Freddie Mac. So I've got cybersecurity background for the last 25 plus years. Thank you.
Give you 10 seconds. Sure. Sorry, guys. Go for it.
Okay. All right. I'd like to start off with Amber for the first question. What is the most significant emerging cybersecurity threat, and how should organizations prepare for them?
So I have a lot of answers for this question, of course. But as far as framing threats, one thing I really want to emphasize is that the threats that will matter the most to your organization really depends on you defining what is most important to you, what are your most important assets, and then focusing on those threats that are the biggest, that are aimed and targeting your assets. So that can help you sort through the multitude of information that's flowing in about quote-unquote emerging threats. The other thing I would say when looking at this whole field of emerging threats is that, a threat to my mic, the emerging threats, is that make sure that you have mastered and have covered your bases when it comes to persistent threats. That might seem fairly obvious, but I can tell you from working with tons of other agencies and large organizations, a lot, and small organizations, they struggle with even covering their bases in terms of the long-term persistent threats. So looking at, for example, we call them target-rich, resource-poor agencies, so schools, hospitals, things like that. They tend to get exploited using the some of the most obvious techniques. You don't have to know about emerging threats to be able to deal with, or not deal with, that somebody's going to click on a phishing link. So deal with the most obvious threats to your environment as defined by the assets that are most important to you. And then if I answer the question more broadly about emerging threats, that I really want to just highlight just a couple of things that are going to be, that are fairly obvious. I think we've all seen the supply chain compromises. Patching, in some cases, helps. In the most recent one, or the biggest one with SolarWinds, of course, we actually patched. And it was those that patched that then created the backdoor for compromise. So it can get you either way, but there are exploits on either side of that. The known exploitation of misconfigured devices, such as devices that say that they can install themselves, often are at the lowest of security settings. And so that's definitely an emerging area. And then AI is an obvious one to go to. Not so much an emerging threat in terms of that we're seeing a large volume of attacks that are based on AI exploits or anything like that, the lack of preparation with regard to the fundamentals really creates a lot of openings for massively scaling up AI attacks, and that many organizations are not prepared to deal with. So even getting people thinking about how AI could be used to exploit the targets in your environment is just not well understood and appreciated.
All right, thank you very much. Greg, if you could kind of piggyback, in the evolving landscape, what new attack vectors are gaining prominence, and how can we effectively mitigate those?
So one of the most interesting things I've seen recently is human cyborgs, people with devices embedded in their bodies. One of my friends actually has a Raspberry Pi that's embedded in his body, and he's able to be a rogue hotspot. And he spends his time at Starbucks and some of the other well-known organizations doing pen testing for them and actually threat mitigation. So I don't believe we're ready for that. We're not even thinking that far ahead that the person themselves, the insider threat, in many situations could be embedded with something that could very simply swipe all of your information. One of the devices he has is a chip in his hand, and he's demonstrated several times that he'll go up to someone and say, hey, my phone's died, right? As a red teamer, we use that quite often, and it's very effective. My phone's died. I have to make a very important phone call. Can I borrow your phone? The first thing you do is you open up your phone, and the next thing that he does is he takes it in his hand, and the chip in the back of his hand, between the thumb and the pointer finger, will actually swipe all of the information off the phone, all of your contacts, your financial information, everything in your wallet, all that type of information will be instantaneously gone off your phone and in his database. Now, you think of this in not only a commercial sector, but in a government sector, where you have people going in and out of secure areas. How do we mitigate against this right now? You can't ask a question about it because it's protected by HIPAA, isn't it? Because it's a medical situation. And now I have somebody with silicone devices embedded in them, moving in and out of secure areas, completely unseen, invisible to all cyber defenses, RF and everything else that we're going to put in place to defend against those things. I don't think that we're ready to actually deal with that situation, number one. Number two, nor are we ready for the next generation, which will involve, there's testing right now where the internet is being run through the neurological system. And that will enable the ability to have a pop-up display in the back of the lens of your eye, and you can actually scan the internet. You've seen a lot of devices right now that don't require you to have hands on keyboard, okay? They're linked directly to your brain and the wavelengths that are going back and forth. We don't have any security against that either. So I think that dealing with what we have today is extremely important, and we're behind the curve on that by far, but we're woefully unprepared for what's coming in the next 2 to 3 years.
I'd like to give Nish an opportunity. Again, in the evolving landscape, what new attack vectors are gaining prominence, and how can they be effectively mitigated?
So I think what Greg mentioned was it's something eye-opening even for me, right? So, but I'm gonna take a step back, and I'm gonna be focused more on what's happening right now, right? What's happening right now is on a daily basis we are seeing thousands and thousands of AI-based attacks, phishing attacks, right? Our filtering systems are filtering out, and we're still not able to, the data that we're collecting from, the data that I'm collecting from our analysts is close to 10 to 15% of our emails are still not being filtered, and these are tools and vendors that are top notch, you know, like Proofpoints and Microsoft. And I'm not trying to bring these tools down. They're doing the best, but the thing is, these attack vectors that are hackers out there, they're just so smart. They're able to infiltrate. And I'll give you an example for that, right? We just had a new hire join company, and within the very first day he was on job, he got a text on his personal phone that the CEO of your company is looking for you to donate money. Can you donate money here, right? So now this is the only place he had changed his information. We asked him, so how many other places have you advertised that you're now joining this new company? LinkedIn was the only place. So these people are scanning LinkedIn and finding who's joining which company at what title, and these guys are attacking, target attack, because this particular individual joined as a senior director of HR. Think about all the privileges this person would have, and they would be able to phish him and get his credentials. So these are the attacks that we're seeing. They're very targeted to privileged users. And so to answer your question, it's mostly AI-based that we're seeing.
Yeah, and it's real interesting. I read a report recently stating that about 88% of all successful attacks start off with some sort of phishing. So that is definitely a true attack vector that we need to pay some very important attention to. Another key thing is I've read that there are really two types of companies, those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. So with that being said, what are the critical elements of effective incident response plans, and how can organizations ensure swift and coordinated response to cyber incidents? And I'll start with you, Amber.
NIST has tons of guidance out there. I think we all know the cybersecurity framework, okay, when it comes to incident response. That's the pat answer to the question. If you want to beef up your incident response plans, at a minimum, please just follow what's in NIST. But in real life, at least what I've seen, exercise your incident response plan in a way that goes beyond your own individual security team. So work with the actual stakeholders that interface with the systems and your network. Bring them in, bring in contractors, bring in subcontractors. Try to make it as realistic as possible. And the more you exercise it, the better your planning's going to get, and the better your planning gets, the more fortified you will become over time. And then when you are hacked, when you get into the category of have been, hopefully you'll have those relationships and those critical communication channels established, which will make it much more fluid in exercising the incident response plan as it is written, and as you need to expound upon and deviate from as needed given the circumstances that you're actually up against.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. The next question is for Greg. We spoke a little bit beforehand, and you talked about your medical device background and working in the medical field. So this is kind of IoT related. But as Internet of Things expand, what security considerations are paramount, and how can vulnerabilities in IoT devices be addressed, including medical devices?
Sure. So I'll stick in the medical device industry specifically because that's
Sure.
where I'm most comfortable at. we look at the medical device industry and we say insulin pump, right? We say pacemaker, things of that nature. The medical research has gone well past that. We're looking at microsensors. We're looking at nanosensors. You can have an embedded nanosensor that is embedded in the left ventricle of the heart, and it'll tell you everything that that heart's doing. And you can collect all that information directly. The problem with this is that they're running on Windows NT, and it's not patched. So if you're in an ICU or a cardiac care unit, you have a situation where you could get the wrong information from that sensor if the system's hacked. And it's not as hard to do as you think. I was involved with a project a number of years ago, and this will lead directly into this, and you'll understand this in a minute, where we actually deployed nanoparticles into a person through aerosol distribution. The person breathed it in. We had done an MRI, so it was a test environment, so it was controlled. But we understood the person's body, and we were able to make a matrix out of their body. What we did was we programmed everything beforehand. So we had nanocarriers, nanosensors, numerous different nanotype devices. We created an array in the back of the right hand, and that allowed us to connect a Bluetooth 4.0 connection to the back of the hand. We ran the signal through the back of the hand, up the median nerve in the right arm, through the central nervous system, where the nanoparticles were deployed in order to manage and control the signal, command and control signal that we were using. And then on the other hand, we actually had nanocarriers that held two things. One an enzyme, one a neurotransmitter. One was acetylcholine, and the other was acetylcholine esterase, which they both neutralize and balance each other out in functionality. So in essence, we were able to parallelize and release through the Bluetooth 4.0 connection the the control of a specific finger. I'm not going to tell you which finger we chose because it was funny for us at the time as researchers. But we did choose a finger that was important, maybe in an active shooter scenario where somebody wouldn't be able to pull the trigger. So having this type of a network where no networks existed before is something completely new and unheard of to us. This can also be controlled through a mesh network, 5G, 6G, Wi-Fi. There's no limit. So the concept of IoT actually reaches into the person themselves now, where we never could have done that before. And I think that's a new experience for us, and something that we're going to have to be able to learn, understand, and manage going forward.
Thank you. My next question is for Nish. As you were telling me the story about your new employee, in the back of my mind, I was like, I hope he went through security awareness training before he kind of came on board and everything happened. So with that being said, what innovative approaches and technologies are being employed in security awareness training programs, and how effective are they in reducing human-related security risks?
Yeah, so I always tell, right, that cybersecurity is about 30% human and 70% technical, right? You can put all the technical controls out there, but if your weakest link cannot follow all the right processes, right, you're going to be breached. And to give you an example, another example, and I'll come back to your answer, right? And because that all of those experiences have led to some of the procedures that I've implemented. Is one of my previous companies, our chief comptroller, right, access to all of the accounting, all of the salaries, bonuses for every individual at the company. She got phished, so she ended up, during phishing attempts, she ended up giving up her credentials, right? That hacker logged in from Germany, and then she got a prompt on her cell phone as a multi-factor authentication, right, MFA, hey, Miss XYZ, you just logged from Germany. Do you approve of it? Guess what? She just approved without even looking at it, right? So here's your weakest link. We had all the technical controls. We had hard passwords, we had multi-factor authentication, but your privileged user ended up giving their credential. Now we had monitoring system. We saw that this employee logged in from Princeton, New Jersey, and now they're logging in from Germany. So within 3 minutes, we disconnected that connection, but within 3 minutes, we lost 2 critical files with a lot of information, right? So that brings me to security awareness. It's a continuous process, right? It's a change of habit within human beings that you need to do it. We need to run monthly phishing campaigns. We need to run, and security awareness should not be, and I really emphasize that it should not be an annual training. It should be by 2 or 3 times training, and you should change your training, because we as individuals, I've grown up, I've come through the ranks, I've been security analyst and engineer, right? When we take those trainings, we know the answers. We just skip through everything and we just click. So change your trainings, change your awareness trainings that would prompt user to be more situation-based question. So they've got to listen to the entire situation, right? So those are my suggestions. I think that's what we followed. You know, we're doing monthly phishing campaign. We're doing targeted phishing campaigns to our privileged users and things like that. So that would be my recommendation.
Amber, if you could chime in as well.
Absolutely. I have a lot to say about this one too. So in my experience being in the government with security awareness training is that it's exactly as Nish said. It's a lot of check the box, click through, just get it done. And I think a lot of that motivation is coming from that there's an effort to just kind of pass the liability, and it's less about actually training people to be more aware and more about just getting the training done so that it goes in somebody's file so that we can say we did what we had to do and that everything they did beyond that was on them. Which is, probably has to be done for legal reasons, for compliance purposes. That you have to do that. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement in this space, and I don't know exactly what the answer is. I like, of course, the idea of the phishing exercises, doing more real-life scenarios, counting that. I would like to see where not just role-based training, but training where it actually gets people to a level of what you would expect of maybe some of your cybersecurity folks would have, kind of encourage people to go like beyond. Maybe even creating badges or certificates, things that entice other people from outside of your SOC to actually want to do some sort of training. Thinking about that. And gamifying it in that way, perhaps, maybe having short trainings, 7 minutes here and there, maybe more often throughout the year, keeping it relevant with what's actually going on. I have a feeling, amongst all these smart people, we can definitely come up with a way to do this. And the day I see a security awareness training video go viral, that means we're done. We got it.
Sure.
Just one thing on top of that. I agree with both of you, absolutely. I think that this is an opportunity for an interdisciplinary solution, because we look at this and we say, well, we're going to try to get folks to not click on the link, right, which is our biggest detriment in the world. But that involves behavioral changes. How many people, seriously, how many people here that are CISOs or CSO or something like that, how many of you talk to a behavioral therapist in actually getting people to change their behavior so they don't click on the link as a default, as opposed to click on the link and say, I probably should call the SOC and tell them what I did, right? It would be much better to get them to change their behavior up front as opposed to having them go back and try to fix it later on. So that's just a thought on that.
And you can hold on to the mic because the next one is directly
Yes, sir.
towards you. So recent reports stated that in the United States, there's about approximately 700,000 unfilled cybersecurity positions, and globally it's about 3.4 million. What can we do as leaders, as security practitioners to kind of help close that gap?
I think the first thing we should do is to make a phone call to China and Russia and get all of their available assets on this job immediately, because that'll solve all of our problems. Seriously though, we do have quite a gap, and interestingly enough, we see the same type of a gap in the medical field. And if you've ever been anywhere, you've seen the call for registered nurses everywhere, right? I need a registered nurse for this and this and this and this and this. And we see the same thing in the cyber field. The medical field started to incentivize different types of registered nurse positions, and they've seen quantitative and qualitative results. People of quality with good backgrounds are engaging and becoming involved now. And I think if we do that in the cybersecurity field, where we start to incentivize more, not every kid coming out of high school is very excited about sitting in, behind a computer all day. They're interested in doing exciting things, right? I come from the offensive world, so my wife tells me. I literally have a very exciting job breaking into things and destroying, per se, right, in a sandbox environment. It happens all the time. Young kids are interested in that type of stuff. I think that if we change and we do gamifying, like Amber said, gamifying is the key, I think, to engaging young people, teaching them at a young age, getting them engaged at a young age. Right, the brain is completely open to different types of modalities of training and learning and ideas up until age 8. And at that point, you're kind of focused and you're kind of shut in on where you're going to go with your life. Now, a boy, his brain isn't fully developed till he's 25, and a girl till they're 21, so you essentially have to work with that along the way. But as far as interest and careers, I believe that the younger that we can talk to children about this, get them involved at home. Kindergarten is a great place to introduce different ideas, and I think you'll see a paradigm shift if you start doing it at a very young age.
Sure. Amber, if I could get...
Well, I think there's a lot to what Greg is saying, and I would especially like the idea of maybe grabbing some of those cyborgs, maybe to fill in the 700K. But as far as workforce in the government in particular, this is a huge challenge because the programs have lagged behind the needs actually in cybersecurity, especially in the defensive realm. Because you have to have people who can both break things and fix them in some cases. But the programs in the academia haven't always been a great match for the kind of people that you actually need to go in and solve these kinds of problems. And the level of specialization is also incredibly challenging. So we have tons of certificates out there, and people then have their certificates or they have their program, and then they're trying to find their niche. And as time goes on and there's this huge gap, people have more and more difficulty finding exactly where they need to be, even if they have cyber training. So in order to fill the larger gap, the recruitment effort that the government has to do to try to get folks on board, it's tremendous. We're in a constant hiring mode, a constant training mode. We're constantly recruiting. We're constantly reaching out to schools and that kind of thing. I like the idea definitely of starting younger. I think we probably have to get away from the terminology, the IT terminology. We have to stop limiting ourselves even with saying like software engineers. We need to get people into cyber who didn't necessarily start in cyber to be interested and kind of pull them over our way. And the younger we do that, of course, the better. For actual entities that have jobs, though, I don't think we can start recruiting in kindergarten realistically. But for those related to academic programs or in the teaching field, we could definitely, as an industry, push for more and more in that direction.
I think one thing that we as leaders over the years that we haven't done a good job in explaining what the cyber jobs are, right? There's an impression that all cyber jobs are technical. This is all, you got to be super technical, you got to know your programming, you got to know your hardware, you got to know your software. This is what it is. In reality, me as CISO, we've got risk governance, we've got engineering operations that I'm managing, right? Now, risk and governance, does it really have to be a cyber person? It is a tedious documenting job, somebody who's an auditing job, somebody that has a previous, maybe a technical writer skill set, right? And a passion for cybersecurity. They can learn controls, NIST controls or FedRAMP controls, they can learn on the job, right? And same thing goes with, and a lot of the jobs that we had even advertised in our technical area, engineering area, we're looking for experts into proof points, and we're looking at experts into IBM, Microsoft tools, right? These are engineers. Why can't they learn on the job? If they've done Splunk, why can't they pick up QRadar? But we as hiring managers, we're so focused on 5 years of Splunk experience. Really? If they've done QRadar, they should be able to pick up Splunk, right? Mm. So I think we need to change our mindset. We should focus on skills, soft skills, people that have passion for cybersecurity and have soft skills, and try to put them into the right place.
Thank you. At this point, we'll like to open it up to the floor to take some questions from the audience and see how that works out. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and someone will come through with the mic. Up front, we have someone up front.
You mentioned security. You mentioned security awareness. I often find that people ignore the most critical people in the corporation for security awareness, and that's the board and the executives, because they're either too seniors in the military, they have too many stars, or the board of directors in a company, or senior executives in a corporation. How do you handle that?
Really, really good question, right? My current position, a very senior level person reporting directly to CEO, failed phishing test 3 times out of 5 months, right? These are monthly exams. Now, my escalation after 3 failures in a year, my escalation is to their manager, which is CEO of our company, right? So I'm debating, what do I do?
I
right?
see you shaking a little bit too as you're talking.
How do I present this, right? So my boss, who's at the peer of this gentleman who failed, right? So I go up to my boss and say, okay, she goes, just do it. Just do what you're supposed to do and I'll support you, right? So I send our automated emails go to the CEO and said XYZ failed. So CEO calls me, like literally like within 15 minutes he calls me. Nish, why are you sending me this email? Why can this not be handled? You go in directly to him and talk it out? I said, no, but this is the company thing. We send it out to all the employees and everything, right? Bottom line short, you're right. I think people at the top expect different treatments. They expect different ways of solving the same problem. My CEO was able to support me. We had the same procedures. We had that person take additional training on. But it requires the support at a leadership level for you to do it. It is a very sensitive, how do you approach it? Even as a CISO, I was struggling. What do I do at this point, right? So you're right. It is a balancing act. And I don't have the right answer unless you have the senior leadership support, you know.
We definitely dealt with this at NIH. We had a very senior level director that wanted exceptions to important policies, and precisely because they are at the high level, that's why they're being targeted. So they're going to get those spear phishing. Somebody's going to grab their badge. They're going to be the ones that are aimed at. And so you have to say no, and you have to say no delicately, right? And you have to say no, and this is why. Or you find some other workaround that works for them. It's not easy, but leaving that open by not resolving it because you get too uncomfortable raising the issue at all is not a workable situation either.
So I'll give you two examples of what I did in this situation. One was I came into a ISSM position and immediately got audience with the CEO and said, this is what we're doing, this is part of the program, and got executive buy-in. At that point, the CEO set policy for how everybody, and I mean everybody, was going to respond if given a violation. So literally, our COO was locked out of meetings for 2 hours that he deemed critical, which showed up on my performance evaluation. But it sent the message that the CEO was serious about it. Okay. So you have that aspect of it. And then, of course, you can also build from the bottom up, like you would do with many other different types of programs. So I think the best type of a response to this question is to build from the bottom up and get executive buy-in at the same time and have them meet in the middle where you do have compliance. And it's supported by the most senior leadership.
Sure, thank you.
You're not going to inject one of those sensors?
Any other questions?
I'm going to try not to.
Okay. So I do have another question then. And you had mentioned artificial intelligence pretty early during the panel discussion. So how is artificial intelligence being used to enhance cybersecurity defense, and what are some of the risks associated with that use? Nish could start off on that.
All right, so my current company, like I said, we are a data analytics company. We're data research company. We're all about data. So we are actually pretty heavily invested into AI, right, early on. But that was from the business point of view. From the cybersecurity side of it came a little bit later on. But so how are we doing it? I think a lot of it, right now, we haven't gotten so much into AI because, honestly speaking, a lot of the vendors out here, and I mean no disrespect to the vendors out here, but even a lot of the vendors, they advertise their products that they have AI, but behind, if you really dig deep, it's ML. It's not AI. AI, it's machine language. It's not LLMs that they have implemented. There are very few products that I've seen with true AI built into there. So bringing into cybersecurity and protecting, we're at the end of the day, we're dependent on the vendors to build innovative products, right? But machine language is there. We build a lot of ML-based, identification monitoring as to who's logging in at what time, if they're logging in from then abnormal behavior logins and things like that. We have built MLs, but not so much AI. There are a few things we are looking into it, but I would say it's pretty at early stage right now.
Sure. Amber?
CISO is doing something pretty interesting with regard to AI and these tabletop exercises that they've been doing. I think it's interesting. We were actually putting together a scenario for this and kind of trying to think through with industry and government how to create a realistic scenario. And the fact is that we were spending so much time on the scenario itself on how it would kind of play out. Someone called out, well, just in general, how are we even going to instruct people to quote unquote find an AI security incident? Like, do we even know how to use our existing tools to detect such a thing? And if we don't, then we need to get different tools. So those are very different questions, and definitely a puzzle that has to get cracked every time that there's an incident being reported that could potentially be AI. So let's go through the steps in the scenario of actually thinking through how are we going to collectively identify that this is an AI-related incident, or that AI was involved in some way. So I really liked that approach because it really demonstrated kind of where we're at collectively. We're aware that things are nebulously out there, but is it in our environment? Is it actually involved in this particular incident? How do we handle this similarly or differently, given whether it's AI or not? So I think I want to avoid kind of the topic of like trying to figure out which tools would be best, because as you said, there's a lot of false advertising out there, and a lot of fear. But I think in general, thinking that question through of how you're actually going to detect it is the first step in how you're going to defend against it.
Thank you. Greg?
So AI and ML is an extremely interesting topic to me, because mostly we have ML, like you said, Nish. Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. But as a defender, you're walking into your environment with a blindfold on and both hands tied behind your back, because there are so many marketplaces in the dark web that you can get more advanced machine learning algorithms and capabilities than you could possibly imagine, than you could possibly defend against. And at the same time, most of your CISOs, ISSMs, are afraid to implement AI or ML solutions because it can go rogue on them. So you're at an extreme detriment to start off. I believe that the CISOs and ISSMs and ISSOs and all those folks have to get over the fear of implementing something that is a formidable solution to the threat that they're facing right now. Some of the groups that I belong to in the dark web, it is a community that's developing different types of ML and making it better and loading new LLMs in different ways, and you're not ready for it. You have to get those types of resources, and you have to understand that understanding and knowing about that aspect of the blind spot of what you're trying to defend against is the thing that's going to overtake you. So get smart on AI, get smart on ML. Don't be afraid to implement it. Use it. It can be a heck of a tool that'll help you in the long run.
Thank you. So this has concluded our panel discussion. I'm pretty sure our panelists will hang around if anyone wants to have a one-on-one discussion, or if you didn't get a chance to ask any questions. If you could please give them a round of applause for... All right, thank you very much, and this has concluded our panel discussion. Thank